Okay, so today we're going to talk about dividing exponents. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a quotient of powers. So think back to multiplying exponents and think about what we did when we had two powers that we were multiplying by each other. So we're doing a similar concept, but here we're dividing them by each other. So say we have x to the 10th over x to the 6th. So if we were to write this out, we would have 10 x's across the top. So let's do that. And then we put that over our 6 x's across the bottom. And what we're going to do here, like we would in anything else, is we can simplify by canceling. So we're going to cancel one x at a time for each one we have on the top or on the bottom. So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with just 4 x's across the top, which would be x to the 4th. So that's why it works the way that it does. But basically what you need to know is when you have an exponent problem, a quotient of powers that's written like this, all you need to do is do x to the 10 minus 6. If we do 10 minus 6, then we're going to get x to the 4th. And that's all there is to it. So we can write it out. That's why it works how it does with the canceling properties. But just know that you need to subtract the bottom from the top, and that will give you all of the information that you need to know. The other way that we divide exponents is by the power of a quotient. So now we have a fraction, and we're raising it to a power. So say we have 2/3, and we're raising that to the power of 2. So we need to take 2 to the second and put that over 3 to the second. If we do 2 to the second, that's 4, and 3 to the second, that's 9. So our answer would be 4/9. So we need to distribute this 2, which is that exponent, to the 2 and to the 3. If we had it in variable terms, it would be something like s over t, and we're raising that to the 4th power. And we would just simply write that as s to the 4th over t to the 4th. And that would be about as good as it got for that particular problem. This is a quotient, or a power of a quotient. A rule that we just need to know when it comes to dividing exponents or solving anything with exponents in general is this thing called the zero exponent. So think what we know about 0, and it usually always gets its own rule. So basically what we're saying is if we have 18 to the 0 power, the answer is 1. If we have x over y, and that's all raised to the 0 power, our answer is still 1. We could have 2/3 and raise that to the 0 power. Our answer is 1. So anything that we have and it's raised to the power of 0, it's just 1. Any non-zero number, or variables in the case of x and y. So that's just a rule that we need to know on the side. Lastly, we're going to talk about negative exponents. So everything we've talked about so far has been what to do when we have positive exponents, but what about when they're negative? Let's look at the example if we have 2 to the negative 3. What do we do with this? If we have a negative exponent on the top, the way that we can make it positive is to move it to the bottom. So we can do 1 over 2 to the 3, because we know that 2 to the negative 3 is basically over an invisible number 1. So it's like we're taking the reciprocal, or we're flipping the equation, and then we're making that positive exponent. So we have 1 to the 2 over 3. If we multiply 2 times 2, we get 4, and 4 times 2, we get 8. So our answer would be 1 to the 8th, is what 2 to the negative 3rd gives us. Another way to look at it is if we have 1 over x to the negative 6. Now we need to get that exponent from the bottom where it's a negative to a positive number. So the only thing we need to do is flip that fraction or move that to the top and make it positive. So now we have x to the 6. X to the 6th power. And now that exponent is a positive exponent. If we have multiple exponents, positive and negative, on the top and the bottom, every time we move them, we're moving them. So if we're moving them to the opposite sign. So now we have 8 to the negative third x over y to the negative 2. So we need to move 8 to the negative third to the bottom, and then we need to move y to the negative 2 to the top. So we're going to keep x where it is because it's a positive exponent, so it's fine. So this would be, we would move y squared to the top, leave x, and then we would move 8 to the third to the bottom. This is basically what you need to know about dividing exponents. This quotient of powers, which is where we subtract numbers from each other based on if they're on the top or the bottom. We always subtract the bottom from the top. The power of a quotient, just that we're using distributive property to distribute that power to both the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator of that fraction. The zero exponent, that any exponent that's 0, anything raised to the power of 0 is going to be 1. And then our negative exponents, that we need to move them from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom to just get rid of that negative, because it's always easier when we're working with positive numbers.